Let's look what happens when we have more than one line. So we're going to still be working inside this main method between this opening curly brace and the closing curly brace. And we're going to change hello world here to line 1. Let's test that. Here, file and run it, and it prints out line 1 for us. We can do more than one line inside a method. And generally when we do that, I am going to use Control C on my keyboard. Get used to keyboard shortcuts, or you can right click, say copy if you would like. Control C is copy, Control V is paste. You can see the shortcuts down here if you can't remember what they are. I'm going to copy that line, and then at the end of this line I'm going to hit the enter key and it goes to the next line. And notice, I'm going to do that a few times. Okay, so this is line 1, and now I just changed this one word here. Line 2, 3, line 4, and line 5. Okay, notice that inside this method, between the beginning of the method, this is called the method signature line, or the method declaration. Between there and where the method ends at this curly brace, all the code inside here is indented one level. So this is using a tab. If you hit tab, it takes you over 5 spaces automatically. Depending on how your IDE is set up. I think by default Apache is 5. Maybe that was only 4. I didn't count. And they're all indented the same amount, which makes it really easy to read. We can tell that this code is inside this method because it's all indented by one level. So that's something called white space. We've got white space over here that's an indicator, and it helps us keep our code organized. So it's important to do that. So I have 5 statements now. Each one ends with a semicolon. And when I run the program, we can see the results in the output window. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and line 5. Just thought of something. I paused the recording for a second and went and put a bigger font so that it's easier for you to see. So we're printing line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, and it runs in order. So these commands each run. This one executes and prints line 1. Then this line executes and prints line 2, and so on and so forth. So unless we do something to tell it to do it differently, all of our code executes sequentially. Sequentially means in sequence or one after another. Let's look at some troubleshooting. Say I think something maybe is happening and my program's not working quite right at line 20. I can come over here on the numbers for my source code, click on the 20, and it inserts something called a breakpoint. And it looks like the stop button off a CD player or an audio interface of some kind, right? That's now a breakpoint. When I run my software, when I run my project, it behaves no differently when I push this button. But if I go to the button to the right, this is the debug button, and I can debug the project. So now I am making use of the debugger part of the IDE. This is the text editor. This button compiles and runs the program. This one compiles and runs it with debugging. Okay. So when I do it with debugging, I want you to see what happens here. So I ran it, and immediately I see something different, right? I have a little green arrow, and this shows me this line. Okay. Down here, I start seeing some windows for variables. We don't have any variables in this project, so this window isn't doing us much good right now. We have a window for breakpoints that says we have a breakpoint at line 20. And here's our output window that we had before, and I want you to notice what happened. Line 1 has executed. Line 2 has executed. Line 3 is in green. That means it will be executed next. Okay. And we have some buttons up here that will help us run through our code one line at a time. It stops at the breakpoint. I'm going to use the step over button, and it will take me to the next line. Now you can see this line became red, meaning it's the last line that was executed. And down here you can see that it was executed because it printed out line 3. And in green we have the line that will be executed next. So I'm going to come up here and click the step over button. Notice I could also hit F8 for that. So line 4 is executed. Hit F8 again. Line 5 has executed. We can see we're up to line 5 down here. If I hit F8 again, our program finishes, because once the main method ends, the program is done. It's complete. Build successful. We spent 1 minute 31 seconds in debug time there looking at that. So these breakpoints really come in handy for editing our debugging and troubleshooting our software. Let me put one. You can put more than one breakpoint. I can do one at line 19 and one at line 21. Go up here and run with the debugger. Okay. If I want to, it stopped at this line. I can tell it to go ahead and play through, continue, which is F5, or I can click the button up here. Okay. And immediately it executed all the lines until it got to the next breakpoint. So we can do step over, we can do continue. We can also stop. Hey, let's just stop right here. So those are a few troubleshooting tools that are going to come in handy for you as you do projects. We will work a lot with debugging. As a matter of fact, you'll hear it from me a lot if you're having problems with your program and you come back to me and say, hey, I can't get this to work. I'll ask you what happened when you debugged it. What happened when you traced through the program line by line? Make sure you do that. Let's do, I want to do one more thing. I've already showed you what happens if we're missing a semicolon. I want to do, there is a file that will be in the lesson plan folders made available to you that contains some lines of code. You can copy them from that file just like I'm doing. I'm copying from that file. The file is called fido.txt. So copy those lines of code, and in your main method here, now notice I'm going to delete this whole block of code, but I did not delete the curly brace that opens up and closes the main method. I also did not delete the curly brace that opens and closes the class. That happens sometimes. And you start seeing stuff like this. I got a squiggly at the end. So I reached the end of file while parsing. And it wants to know why. Well, it's expecting another curly brace that it doesn't see. Now this one is associated with that, but we don't have an ending associated with that one. Okay. So be careful keeping your curly braces and things. Keep them indented. This curly brace is on this level because it closes the opening of the class right there. This curly brace is indented one because it goes with the method that gets opened right there. And inside here, I'm going to tab over indented one level. I need some white space there to make our code readable. And I pasted this, but notice what happened when I pasted it. It's not aligned very well. I'm going to come at the beginning of each one of these lines. And I'm going to put in a couple tabs to line them up nice and neat so my code is readable, easy to understand. It makes a difference, and part of your evaluations on your code will be based on white space, indentation, indent each level. Keep things lined up so they look nice. So you can probably tell right now what this is going to be. It's print lines, but I'm using characters, and you've probably seen this maybe in email messages. It's called ASCII art, ASCII. ASCII is a code for all the characters. We used to use it a lot. There's newer versions of it out. that we use, but it's a standardized set of characters that we use. And back in my day when I was young, we used to make art, some pretty intensive stuff actually, but we didn't have graphics. All we had was characters, so we made ASCII art. So let's look at this one. Let's run it and see what it does. And it prints my little dog. And my dog even has toenails. 5 on that foot, 5 on that foot. And here's the lines that printed out. Now you might notice that there's more characters up here than there is down here. So in this line, for instance, we see a period, a dash, quotation, a dash, and a period again. But if you look inside the quotation marks, I see a period, a dash, a backslash, and please know the difference between backslash and forward slash. Backslash, quotation mark, dash, dot. I've got an extra character here, and the question is why? Let's see what happens when I get rid of that backslash. Okay. Now all of a sudden I have an error. Unclosed string literal. I opened this string. A string is the words that we're printing out on each one of these lines. Each one of these things inside the quotation marks is called a string. But what happened here is I wanted to print out a quotation mark. Okay. But it thinks this is the opening quotation mark. This must be the closing quotation mark. What's this? It's a quotation without a matching open or close. And what we really wanted to do is print this out. So we've confused the compiler. It thinks this is the closing quotation, and actually it's part of the string we want to print out. So we have to use something called an escape character. An escape character is a backslash. If we hit backslash, the backslash, when it sees the backslash, automatically tells it the character that follows is something to be printed out. It's not really part of the code. So if I want to use a quotation mark, I have to escape it by using a backslash in front of it. And when I print it out, the backslash doesn't print, just the quotation mark does. Let's look at another example of that. Here, in this line, I have a forward slash, a pipe, which is a vertical line. You can find pipes right above your enter key if you hold shift. It's above the backslash key, actually. Shift with the backslash key gives you a pipe, a vertical line. We have a 6, space, 6, another pipe, and a backslash. Well, if you remember here, I said the backslash is an escape character. So what if I really want to print a backslash? When I use a backslash, it thinks that the character after it is an escape code of some kind. If I want to print one backslash, I actually have to put 2 backslashes. Okay. So you can see in this second line, there are 2 backslashes here, but down on our art, it only prints out 1. Okay. Because the backslash is a special character, it also has to be escaped. Same thing happens on this line. Down here, you can see a couple quotation marks that had to be backslash. They had to be escaped in order to use them. And then lastly, I have Fido down here. But notice Fido, there's an empty line between the toenails, which was on this line, and Fido, which was on this line. And that's because I used another escape character, a backslash n. Backslash n means new line. So I said, print a new line, go to the next line, new line, however we want to say it, and then print out these characters. And that's where Fido came from. The last thing I want to talk about is commenting your code. It's often hard to read things that are in code, or if they have long formulas, people might not understand what they do, or you as the programmer may not understand what you did. Okay. So you leave comments in your code for other people who might need to read your code. And you also leave comments in your code for yourself, because when you come back to this code in a year, you might not remember exactly what you were doing. So there's a couple ways to do comments, and one of them is right up here. This is called a block comment. And it starts with a /* and ends with a */. And in here, we can put a comment about what our code does. And notice for a block comment, we tend to put it above. Main method draws a dog. Okay, this is a comment. A block comment usually tells me something about the code that follows it. Okay? But I can also comment a single line by using // and notice these slashes are not inside my print line. I can come out here and say 2 slashes. I can say new line followed by the dog name. Okay. So I can do a single line comment at the end of a line. I could also do a single line comment on its own line. Okay, there's a single line comment. Get ready to draw the dog. Let me go ahead and run this, and you'll see that it doesn't change anything about how the program runs. Comments are only meant for the programmer to see, so that you can give other programmers and yourself understanding of what's going on and why you did what you did. I could put one in here that says draw the dog body. And I can change this one to head. Get ready to draw the dog head. Get ready to draw the dog body. Okay, and this section is the body. All right. I may even want to use some line space between there just to make it clear that, you know, this line isn't really part of the picture of the dog. It's more like the label for the dog, right? So I can use white space to separate sections of my code. I can use an empty line here or there. Don't overuse white space. A blank line is nice to separate two pieces of code that do different things. Indents, you really need to use indents to keep track. Let me show you something else real quickly. Okay, I could put all my code on one line if I wanted to. As long as there's a semicolon, this knows that's the end of that statement, and then here comes the next statement. If I run this program, it works just fine. It looks just like it did before. But it's really hard to read. We could almost tell that was a dog before, but now we can't tell. So it's important to keep your code formatting nice. It will help you. It will help others who have to read your code. All right. The next video is going to go over your assignment for this week.